In ancient Rome, death usually arrived with the sound of marching boots, the clash of steel, or the roar of the crowd in the Colosseum. It was loud, it was public, it was messy. But there was another kind of death in the empire, a death that made no sound, a death that struck in the safety of your own dining room, surrounded by your friends and family. Imagine you are the emperor. You have the Praetorian Guard watching your door. You have armies at your command. You have a servant whose only job is to taste your food before it touches your lips. You are supposed to be the most protected man on earth. And yet, you take a bite of your favorite dish, a roasted mushroom perhaps, and within seconds, your throat closes, your vision blurs, you gasp for air, but your lungs refuse to fill. You look around the room, seeing the faces of your wife, your advisors, your children, and you realize, as the darkness takes you, that your killer isn't even in the room. The killer is a woman sitting in a dark cell miles away, mixing a powder into a vial. Her name was Locusta. History books often gloss over her. They focus on the mad emperors like Nero or Caligula. But Locusta was the woman standing in their shadow. She was the first documented serial killer in Western history. She was a state-sponsored assassin who turned toxicology into a dark art form. She didn't just kill. She created a system of murder so efficient that the emperor gave her a license to kill and a school to teach others her craft. She was the godmother of poison. And for a brief, terrifying window of time, she held the fate of the Roman Empire in a small glass jar. If you think you know the story of Rome, you only know what happened in the daylight. If you want to know what happened in the dark, subscribe now. Let's open the case file on history's deadliest woman. To understand Locusta, you have to understand where she came from. She wasn't a Roman noblewoman bored with palace life. She was an outsider. She was born in Gaul, in what is now modern-day France. The Gauls were known for their deep knowledge of the forests. They knew which roots could heal a wound and which berries could stop a heart. Locusta didn't just learn this folklore, she mastered it. She was, in modern terms, a brilliant organic chemist. But she didn't use her genius to cure the sick. She used it to sell death to the highest bidder. She arrived in Rome not as a conqueror, but as a prisoner. By the early 50s AD, her reputation had already caught up with her. She had been arrested for poisoning a local target. In a normal world, she would have been executed in the arena, torn apart by wild beasts for the amusement of the mob. But this was not a normal world. This was the Rome of Empress Agrippina. Agrippina was the wife of the Emperor Claudius, and she was a woman of terrifying ambition. She had a son from a previous marriage, a young boy named Nero. Agrippina had one goal in life: to put Nero on the throne. The only obstacle standing in her way was her husband, Claudius, and his own biological son, Britannicus. Agrippina didn't look at Locusta and see a criminal. She saw a weapon. She saw a tool that could solve problems that swords could not. So, instead of executing Locusta, Agrippina made her an offer: freedom, wealth, and protection in exchange for her services. Locusta accepted. She became the emperor's secret weapon, hidden away in the bowels of the palace, testing her mixtures, refining her dosages, and waiting for the order. And soon, the order came. The target was the emperor himself, Claudius. It is the year 54 AD. Claudius is old, but he is healthy. Too healthy for Agrippina's liking. He is beginning to favor his own son, Britannicus, over Nero. Agrippina knows that if she waits any longer, her chance will disappear. She goes to Locusta with a specific request: a poison that acts quickly but mimics the symptoms of natural illness. It has to be potent enough to kill a large man, but subtle enough to fool the doctors. Locusta goes to work. She knows Claudius has a weakness. He loves food. Specifically, he loves mushrooms. Locusta prepares a dish of delectable fungi, but one of them is infused with a concentrated toxin, likely derived from the deathcap mushroom or aconite. It is a masterpiece of culinary assassination. At the royal banquet, the dish is served. Halotus, the emperor's food taster, takes a bite. Nothing happens. Locusta has likely used a slow-acting agent or ensured the taster got a clean piece. Claudius, seeing it as safe, devours the plate. But then, something goes wrong. Claudius begins to choke. He clutches his stomach, but he doesn't die. Perhaps he had built up a tolerance, or perhaps he had drunk too much wine, diluting the effect. His body rejects the poison, and he begins to vomit violently. Panic ensues in the dining hall. Agrippina is terrified. If Claudius survives this, he will realize he was poisoned. He will torture the servants. The truth will come out, and Agrippina and Nero will be executed. She needs a plan B, and Locusta has prepared for this. Agrippina signals the emperor's doctor Xenophon. He is on her payroll. He rushes to the emperor's side, pretending to help him vomit to clear his stomach. He grabs a feather, a common tool used to tickle the back of the throat to induce vomiting. But this is no ordinary feather. Locusta has dipped the tip of it in a second, fast-acting neurotoxin. The doctor jams the feather down the emperor's throat. It looks like a medical procedure. In reality, it is the death blow. The poison enters the mucous membranes instantly. Claudius convulses once and then goes still. The deed is done. Nero is proclaimed emperor, and in the shadows, Locusta smiles. She has just killed the most powerful man on earth, and no one suspects a thing. With Nero on the throne, you might think Locusta's job was finished, but for a tyrant, the paranoia never ends. Nero is young, unstable, and cruel, and he has a problem. His stepbrother, Britannicus. The boy is turning 14, the age of manhood in Rome. He is the legitimate heir of Claudius. As long as Britannicus is alive, Nero's throne is shaky. Nero calls for Locusta. He demands a poison that is instant. He doesn't want Britannicus to get sick. He wants him to drop dead. Locusta provides a mixture. Nero orders it to be given to Britannicus, but once again, disaster strikes. Britannicus drinks it, but he only develops severe diarrhea. He survives. Nero is furious. He is not a man who tolerates failure. He summons Locusta to the palace. In a fit of rage, the emperor of Rome beats the woman with his own hands. He screams at her, accusing her of giving him a laxative instead of a poison because she is afraid of the law. He gives her an ultimatum: kill Britannicus or die. Locusta goes back to her laboratory. This time, the gloves are off. She is not testing on animals anymore. She demands human subjects. Nero gives her convicted criminals from the dungeons. Locusta brews a new concoction. She forces a slave to drink it. The slave dies, but it takes 5 hours. Too slow, she says. She boils the mixture down. She concentrates the hemlock. She adds opium and nightshade. She forces a second slave to drink it. The man drops dead before the cup even hits the floor. Perfect, she says. But now they have a tactical problem. Britannicus has his own food taster, a man who checks every solid and liquid. How do you bypass the security system? Locusta devises a plan that is so simple, it is genius. It relies on the laws of physics, not just chemistry. The banquet is held. Britannicus calls for a drink. The taster is handed a cup of hot wine. He tastes it. He survives. It is safe. He hands it to Britannicus, but the wine is too hot to drink. Britannicus complains. "Cool it down," he orders. A servant steps forward with a pitcher of cold water. In Roman custom, the water used to cool wine was not tasted. It was considered clean. The servant pours the cold water into the wine. The poison is in the water. Britannicus takes a long drink. The effect is instantaneous. He loses his voice. His breath stops. He falls backward off his couch, crashing onto the floor, his eyes rolling back in his head. The room goes silent. The guests are horrified. They look at Nero. Nero, reclining on his couch, doesn't even look up from his food. He casually waves his hand. "Don't worry," he says. "My brother has had epilepsy since he was a child. He will recover soon." Britannicus dies right there on the floor. The guests know it's a lie. They know it's murder. But they are too terrified to speak. They continue to eat, stepping over the corpse of the rightful heir. After the murder of Britannicus, Locusta was no longer just a servant. She was a partner in crime to the emperor. Nero was ecstatic. He granted her a full pardon for all her past crimes. But he didn't stop there. He gave her vast estates in the country. He gave her gold. He gave her servants. And then he did something unprecedented. He officially appointed her as the imperial poisoner. He set up a school for her, an academy of death. He sent students to her, young men and women who were to be trained in the arts of toxicology. Locusta became a professor of assassination. She taught them how to extract cyanide from plants, how to mask the bitter taste of nightshade, and how to spot a poisoned drink. For years, Locusta lived like royalty. She walked the streets of Rome with impunity. Senators feared her. Generals stepped out of her way. Everyone knew that if you crossed Locusta, you wouldn't die in a duel. You would die choking on your next glass of wine. She was the ultimate symbol of Nero's corruption, a convicted foreign murderer who held the keys to life and death simply because she was useful to the monster on the throne. But in Rome, power is a pendulum. It swings back and forth, and eventually it cuts your head off. By the year 68 AD, Nero's reign of terror had gone too far. The Senate declared him an enemy of the state. The armies rebelled. Abandoned by everyone, Nero fled the city and committed suicide. Locusta's protector was gone. The new emperor, Galba, was a stern, old-fashioned soldier. He wanted to purge Rome of Nero's filth. He arrested Nero's inner circle, the spies, the pimps, and the assassins. Locusta was at the top of the list. She was dragged from her estate in chains. This time, there was no Agrippina to save her. There was no Nero to pardon her. The people of Rome wanted blood. They blamed her for the deaths of their beloved Britannicus and countless others. The historical accounts of her death vary, but they all agree on one thing: it was horrific. Galba didn't just want her dead, he wanted to make an example of her. She was led through the streets of Rome in a humiliating procession, pelted with filth by the mob. According to some dark legends of the time, she was taken to the arena. She wasn't given the dignity of a sword. It is said she was bound and subjected to the beasts, trained wild animals, perhaps a giraffe or a bull, utilized in a way that was designed to inflict maximum shame and agony before she was finally torn apart. The godmother of poison died screaming, her body broken, her legacy washed away in the sand of the execution ground. Locusta of Gaul serves as a terrifying reminder of what happens when science is stripped of ethics. She was a pioneer, a genius in her field, but she used her brilliance to uphold a tyranny. In a world dominated by men with swords, Locusta proved that a woman with a vial could be the most dangerous person in the room. She killed emperors, eliminated heirs, and terrified a nation, all without ever raising a voice. She was the shadow behind the throne, the darkness in the wine cup. But her story raises a question. If you were in Nero's position, living in a viper's nest where everyone wants you dead, would you have executed Locusta? Or would you have kept her close just in case? Let me know your verdict in the comments below. And if you think Locusta's end was brutal, you haven't seen anything yet. The Romans had a specific punishment for those who killed their fathers, a punishment involving a sack, a dog, a rooster, and a viper. It's called pona cullae, and it makes the electric chair look like a massage. Click right here to watch that video. You won't believe it was legal. I'll see you there.